I'm really pleased to be welcome to be joined here with Laura Dymphna, Laura Irving, and Nick Drake. So I think what we're just going to do is listen to some short extracts from your work and just get you to talk a little bit about the process, the creative process, how you chose the piece in the first place, or did it choose you? How did it speak to you? And how you went about shaping your response to it. So, shall we begin with Laura Dymphna?
Oh yeah.
And your piece. So we're just going to have a little listen first.
They are getting famous looking and all this. And what are they doing for us?
There we are. Abrupt end. But,
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit more about the original recording that it's based on, and how you approached this task?
Yeah. Well, it's a recording from Goodenough Island in Papua New Guinea, the Kadede dance song, and I joined the project quite late, so this was just one of two tracks that were left. So yeah, it definitely chose me. And yeah, I was kind of happy because it kind of fits in with my kind of experimental approach to music, but I was also quite concerned because I had no connection with Goodenough Island. I'm not even sure I had heard of Goodenough Island before, so I had no connection with the people, the culture, the place. So I was kind of really concerned that I wouldn't, I'd kind of repeat the kind of anthropologists' potential kind of colonial and racist approach, like many were at the time. So I guess I really just wanted to bring some present-day voices from Goodenough Island, and the way I usually make sounds and music is just use field recordings and process them. So I did that here. I took the original sound. It was a song sung by three people, and I processed it in lots of different ways, and then I kind of layered it with my own field recordings. And then I also found some recent news articles that were kind of discussing the concerns of the people of Goodenough Island and a neighbouring island with kind of more like foreign logging and mining companies that were working on the island. So I was kind of, I guess the main idea of the piece is to kind of grapple with that, my positionality as an outsider, because and also to kind of bring that debate of ecology versus economic kind of the debate that's kind of happening there today. So, and I guess the question, we didn't quite hear it, but and the title is "What Are They Doing for Us?" And it's not only just asking outward, but it's kind of asking me, what am I really doing for this, for the project, and for the people are good enough. So that's mine.
Thanks, Laura. So, Laura Irving, we'll turn to you now and have a little listen to your work.
It's a fine line between being paralysed by the worry of getting it wrong and the respect of what's happened before. Thinking about where things have come from and the borderline of falling into appropriation or creating something entirely new, and that kind of tension between the two. I think with Ray Collective, we just made it about the sun and the fact the sun goes up and the sun goes down, because there's really not much more to it than that. So we're singing for the sun.
Just a taste of your piece there, which is fascinating. I was listening to it. Yeah, can you say something about it?
Yeah, thank you. So what you've just heard was somebody who's formed a kind of rave folk dance troupe called Ray Collective, and the piece is somebody speaking about that and the experience of being part of it, and also the experience of setting it up. You heard her talking about appropriation, and there were some of the things where we were thinking about setting up that group that is taking folk dancing and Morris dancing, but off in a slightly different, to a different destination, and whether we had the right to do that without being experts in folk dance and to take it somewhere new. And the reason that I chose that was because the sound that I got from the archive was from the Uwa people in Colombia, and when I researched that sound, I didn't really put the sound first, more like the context of the sound, and those people have a rich, really rich heritage of performative seasonal ritual that is linked to the solstice. And Ray Collective that you heard from there only perform on the solstice, and we do a kind of ritualistic dance. So in many ways, there's absolutely no connection between the two, and I, like Laura, was really struggling with how can I connect with a sound that I'm so removed from and a people that I'm so removed from. So I was trying to, in my research, identify that kind of connective tissue, and to me there felt something like really human with that need to gather and dance that I could relate to, and that was kind of how this piece was born.
Wonderful. Thanks for really insight. So, Nick, we're going to move over to your piece now. All right. And have a little listen.
Yeah. From the archive, from the source, Mr. Thomas Penniman, former curator of the Pitt Rivers Museum, on the 28th of November 1974, performing a work song of weaving from the Gower Peninsula. Welsh mountain sheep, hundreds of mills, from fleece to fabric, an industry of work, going strong then, when the song was first sung.
Mrs. Tanner had 6 sons, and they all sang like thrushes while they worked at the loom.
There's a lot more of it than that.
Sorry, Tom. Sorry. So Tom Penniman, this recording is very special to me because it's one of my predecessors in the museum as a curator here. So hearing his voice suddenly when we digitised it was incredible to hear. Yeah. Do you want to say something about why you chose this recording?
Well, in common with everyone else, I didn't really choose it because I came late to the party. So it was, I'll have to be honest, it wasn't my first choice because I listened to it and I thought, I don't know what to make of this. It's a very, very strange thing. It starts with this gentleman who's obviously quite elderly reciting the song, and to start with, it has a refrain which you've just heard. But as the song goes on, it becomes stranger and stranger, and it becomes about how the son's only had half a herring for breakfast, and he beats his hand on the table, and then it becomes a kind of hard to follow descent into incoherence, really, by the end of it. So it was really quite strange. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do with this? I mean, and also, what's my relationship with this thing? So this is Thomas Penniman, who it turned out. When I started to pull the threads of this weaving song, it was very interesting. So Thomas Penniman was the curator here in the Pitt Rivers Museum from the 1930s to the 1960s. And he's singing a song which was sung to him by Phil Tanner, who is mentioned in the song. And Phil Tanner was known as the Gower Nightingale. And so he was very, very important because he knew the folk singers of that area. He remembered and performed their songs. And he became himself a kind of living archive across a number of decades to keep these songs going, I suppose. Going from pub to radio, to TV, to LP. And I found the kind of transmission of all of that, this old song, going through these variant technologies, I suppose, and the different ways of holding on to a fragile thing. A song is a fragile thing in some ways. I found that really moving. And then in the end, of course, the thing that we're listening to is the format is called the WAV, and it's a lossless format. So in a way, the song's story, the song's history, takes us across a whole technological evolution, but it's actually singing about something which was early industrial, people in quite a lot of poverty, I think, weaving, making shawls, making blankets, and having these songs which were a way of doing the work, and I'm sure a way of being together, of gathering. And there's something about weaving and gathering and songs and work that I just found very, very beautiful and very moving. But I'm not a composer, so I wrote a poem in kind of reaction or response to his song, and I suppose I was aware that this is a man who was quite elderly at this point, and I sort of wanted to take care of him. So the last piece of the recording is him being helped to stop the recording by someone who's there at the time, and there's something very, very moving about this very last section where there's a kind of crackle of time, and then he needs help, and then someone presses the stop button. So I love that. I love the arc of it.
It's very moving, isn't it?
Mm.
So you've all, done quite a detailed sort of look into the recordings and the context of them and the cultural background to some of them. How important did you find that as part of, your process of making your own piece of work, digging into the background? Maybe?
Yeah, really vital, because I don't know, we all, I think, struggled in a similar way with, what our connection to this was and all of the ethical things that come with handling these sounds. So for me personally, that was the route in. Learning about the culture, learning about the context, learning about the sound recordist, like loads of fascinating stuff. And why this is such an amazing opportunity is this is a world and a culture that I would have no window into if it hadn't been for a project like this. So for me it's really vital, and also just a really lovely opportunity. With all the problems that are there with us using these sounds, there is also a human element that we can connect to that is similar, or that's how I felt in my piece.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, for me, the sound, I read a lot of the anthropologists' writing and tried to actually understand what the song was about, but I really actually, in the end, couldn't find any information on it. So I guess that's what kind of ended up making me kind of think about it in a more conceptual way, really. And so, and I used the sound to create the kind of muddiness of my knowledge as well.
And did you read the full volume of work and song in Gower Peninsula? Or?
I did not. No, I fess up. I didn't. But you can sleuth around a lot on the internet. So there's there was a lot to be found about for me, a lot to be discovered about the culture of this English-speaking part of the Gower Peninsula, which was very dependent on weaving, and that was an incredibly successful industry at the time the song was being sung, and it was soon to tip over into unfortunate redundancy because of industrialisation. So there was, some way I want to reconnect to that lost world and find, find. It's so much about finding what are the stories of these objects, not just information, which is important. What are the stories of all the objects in those rooms? What are the lost stories in particular? How have they become disconnected from the stories within which they were made and which they had meaning and purpose, and now they are in those rooms sort of weirdly detached from the histories and the stories of the cultures that made them. So mine was a bit simpler in the sense that it was an English language piece. It was geographically quite close, but still there was a lot of wondering about what I was doing with this material and what was my responsibility to it and what kind of story should be told about it.
And you've all spoken somewhat about the challenges you faced, whether challenges of time, geographical distance and understanding, or even technical challenges. But what did you find the most challenging aspect of participating in the project? I don't mind who wants to kick us off.
I guess for me it's kind of doing justice, or kind of I guess what I said before, because I think I felt a bit of ambivalence about the project in the first place, which is maybe why I didn't put so much effort in my application, and which is maybe why, you know, I kind of ended up joining late. And so I think that was just a real challenge to think, how can I create something that's meaningful to the people from where the sound was recording from, and kind of bring out their voices and not just try and project kind of my idea or of what's kind of, I mean, even the ambivalence of, because they're talking about mining and the benefits potentially for the economy, but then the kind of danger, the risks of that. And so it's also kind of not kind of judging people for potentially wanting to have a better life and have money, you know, it's this real ambivalence I had, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge.
And how are you with that at the moment?
I think, I feel okay that it's kind of part of the conversation. I don't feel like it will ever necessarily be resolved, but I suppose I'm glad that it's kind of part of the conversation.
Do you have similar challenges? You've spoken about some of the ethical concerns you had going into it.
Yeah, I did, but then yes, and I did, and I probably did to some extent throughout. But then I think similarly to, you know, in the excerpt of the piece that you played, where she just says, you know, in the end we just made it about the sun, and it's a universal, and therefore we can frame the work that we're doing under that, and then we can look forward instead of looking backwards. And this is not to be dismissive of all the reasons that we need to be sensitive and all the conversations that need to be had around using archived material, but for me, I found it much more comfortable once I decided that I was working with a theme. I'm not trying to make the sound, I'm not trying to speak to what the sound's about or those people. I'm trying to speak to a universal theme and just use it to inform and inspire an idea. And when I'd settled there, then I could connect to it, and I could find that it wasn't problematic work. But that's not to say that those... I could, but it's not to say that those concerns vanish, because, you know, I'm acutely aware of all the... You could criticise, like, why am I even trying to draw a line between people in Bournemouth in this culture and this culture here that is rich, and, you know, I could only scratch the surface of. So, you know, it doesn't disappear, but it, for me... You're
not saying that Bournemouth culture is not rich, though.
I see you haven't been. Yeah, and I think just quickly also to touch on that access of information, that was a challenge for me, to be able to access the information to research this culture was really hard, and I had to rely on a very kind librarian at this institution who sort of managed to get me a book that I shouldn't have had access to, but I did have to go through many hurdles. But I think there's a conversation there about when people want to, who can access the archives, who can learn about this material is fascinating, but because I'm not part of an institution, or even being part of this project didn't give me access readily to learn about this culture and explore this. So I think, you know, maybe not for this panel, but another point.
We look forward to that. Now, the recordings all contain traces of lived experiences of people at different times and different places. So I'd be really interested to know what sort of lived experience you brought to the creative response. Is there some of you, is there a lot of you in these recording, the pieces you've come up with?
Oh, hi. Yeah, I mean, you know, we made them, so there's everything's in there in a way. I suppose the things that really move me and made me want to do it were about time and about change and about how some things survive and other things are lost along the way. And somehow it was embodied in this strange, incantatory, half-remembered song. So, yeah, and my Auntie Dot was Welsh, so, you know, there's from near the Gower Peninsula, so there's a bit of that. Yeah.
I think it's always important with this stuff to be reflexive and to bring your own subjectivity. So hopefully I did bring kind of that in, to acknowledge my kind of lack of knowledge of the culture.
I think I've just come out as a folk dancer, so yeah.
And so just then thinking about, your wider practice and how does this participation fit into your wider sort of artistic practice? Is it a whole new direction for you to lead off in engaging with historical material, for instance, or is this a one-off?
I love archive rummaging, be that in literal archives or in record stores or charity shops or whatever. So using historic material of different kinds is not new for me, but having this distinct, having the limitations of a specific sound and a culture or an access to an archive that I might not have picked or had before, it gives it a shape to create a work that I think I wouldn't have created otherwise. So in that sense, yeah, absolutely.
You now archive using Artists Forevermore, or?
Well, yeah, I suppose I was thinking that I'm not really, I feel more comfortable saying that maybe I'm a sound artist rather than a musician, so I suppose it kind of made me feel more comfortable about that, rather, I'm not trying to create, I also think that everything we do is music at the same time, but I feel like it's somewhere I sit more comfortably with, and perhaps this has solidified that a bit.
Any reflections on that, Nick?
I don't know. I'm always looking for material that might collide and, turn out to be a poem. And in this case, it did. So that was that felt lucky. But I think most of what I do is it starts with a story I've heard, or it starts with an image, or a piece of something that strikes me as awful about the horror of the world or the beauty of the world. So trying to find things that hold that, like this project did.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Something about sound, isn't it, that opens up perspectives on, history or culture and lived experience of other people in a way that other media don't. It's something very immediate and real, and hearing the voice of Tom Penniman. And as I say, that I was suddenly shocked to hear. Yeah. Suddenly moved and shocked to hear, a curator whose name I'd known through the documentation museum for decades, suddenly speaking.
It's weird.
In some sort of strange accent that he's concocted for the song.
Oh yes, it does sound quite odd.
Any reflections there for you about how connecting with another culture, but through sound in particular, has been for you?
It's an interesting one.
I don't know if you work in other mediums yourselves. Are you visual artists, or you always work in sound?
Yeah, I'm always working in sound. I think there's just sound is such an intimate medium. So I think that's why we can be moved in the way that you're describing, and a long heritage of people feeling that sound recordings are like ghosts trapped inside the machine. There's something magical about that whole process of preserving that snapshot in time that feels, I don't know, to me has a different layer to just an image, something like that.
Yeah, we were speaking earlier just about how sound is so linked to emotion and memory, and I think for me it's just the most kind of important medium.
Are you a writer as well as a sound artist?
I'm not a sound artist at all, actually.
Yeah.
So
well, you are now.
Yeah. So my piece is very, very lo-fi, but I don't have any technology. So
That's
I was
your niche.
Recording it on my desktop with my partner playing. Yeah. The sound recording and pressing the button and then trying to get it. It's pretty crappy, actually, but it's quite sweet in its own way. Songs are important, songs stay in the memory in the way that almost nothing else does, and so it was great to be involved in a song making, sound making project, and I like working with composers as well, where you can offer something very, very simple, and when it's composed and sung, it becomes this extraordinary, wonderful thing.
Yeah, fantastic. I'd love to open up the opportunity for some questions from anybody else in the audience. If you'd like to ask anyone a question.
Sorry. I'd really like to hear more about the sort of framing of this project, as it seems to me, having only just been introduced to it, as like European individuals interpreting culture that they're not knowledgeable about, and then just, presenting that to us. Did you feel vulnerable taking on that kind of maybe like neo-colonial role? And was the decision to do this project in that way contentious?
There's 22 countries from all over the world involved in the project, so by no means white Europeans only involved in the project. But yeah, any thoughts?
Yeah, that was huge for me. I totally felt like that I wasn't sure if it was the right thing, if I was the right person to do this. And I was kind of reading about the anthropologist and potentially kind of his history of his own kind of ideas of race. And so I did feel quite it was kind of a big risk of what am I, and I guess that's why I didn't interpret it purely from a musical perspective, because I thought that also because I'm not a musician, but I thought that it needed a bit more unpacking, and I needed to deal with the fact that I'm this white Western person who has no knowledge and the danger of me interpreting it in a way that's completely not what it was intended to, and also misrepresenting everything. So that was the whole thing for me anyway.
Any other reflections on that question?
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I think I hope that I've made that clear in saying, and I think I can speak for a lot of the artists that are part of this project, irrespective of their cultural identity or where they're geolocated, because it's unlikely that they'll be dealing with a sound that is from their cultural heritage. So I think that's been an experience that all of us have been grappling with as artists. And I think what I found interesting about how you phrased that was that we are reinterpreting a culture, which I don't think, and reflecting it back or somehow, which was really where I wanted to make that departure with my work. And I think many of the other works are finding it as a jumping off point, and I'm not trying to reflect that culture. I'm trying to learn about it, and I'm speaking to something that I can speak to that's been inspired by this particular sound, in the same way that I might as well readily walk around an art gallery or in the street or whatever, and find something that inspires me to create a work. So it definitely really thorny and sticky, and nobody wants to be that kind of Moby person, but it's an interesting argument to have, isn't it, about like who, and in my piece we're talking about folk dancing, and it's from our own, most of the people there, I think, in part of the group, folk dancing is our like national cultural heritage. And we're having the same discussions within that group about, do we have the right to reinterpret folk dance? Do we know enough about it? Are we not immersed in the cultural heritage of it? Even though it's like ours, white European, can we do this? I think the arguments are very similar. So the question has to be, how aligned do you need to be to a source material to have the right to repurpose it? And I think that's a really interesting debate to have.
Any other quick questions? No? In that case, I'd just like to really thank you guys for your insights and sharing your thoughts and feelings. We're going to be archiving a lot of the work from this project. So if you'd like to be archived at the Pitt Rivers and add your layer to that archive, we'd be very pleased to include it. It's a legacy for this project, so we'll talk more.
Okay.
Thank you very much.